And we are recording.
All right. My name is Samuel Smith. I am the author of The Breathing Wall in the Collective Darkness anthology. And what brought me into the anthology is I was part of a local writing group and that decided they were going to put together the thing. So I joined in on it kind of late, threw the thing together in a hurry. But then otherwise, I've always been somebody who's done a little bit of writing here and there ever since grade school. And really decided recently to kind of buckle down and get into, really writing and hopefully producing more works to come.
What kind of genre do you like the most?
I'm somebody that's more literary and satire. However, growing up, I was definitely somebody that was into science fiction and fantasy. One of my favorite books growing up was Ender's Game. I read that like 4 times. And then I've read through the actual Ender's series like twice. So I've really enjoyed that. And then otherwise, like I'll kind of read things here and there. If it's interesting enough, somebody recommends it to me. And that's what it really comes down to. But in terms of writing, for sure, it's a more literary and satire.
That's interesting. So how did you get, because I know it's because it was the horror anthology and that was kind of why, but how did you get your story out of that? Like what inspired you to write that horror? Because it's also fantasy-esque, but also it is a horror.
Yeah, it is. And so whenever it came to that, I'm trying to think, because I know part of what the world that comes from is one that I've actually kind of been thinking of in the background. It's related to a much bigger story, mythology kind of thing. And so I figured I could do something with that. And then a lot of the other details kind of fell into place because I hadn't actually thought about that particular world or those particular cities. And then I just had this idea of like, what if like somebody's hand was cursed? Like what, like the thing that they need to be able to do their work. Like what if that was the thing that ended up going wrong, and what kind of stuff go wrong? And then stuff kind of developed from there. The thing with the actual wall itself and the actual fleshy material is based upon this kind of monstrous alien species that does actually like take over worlds essentially. And so I was basically,
Very Lovecraftian.
Yeah, and that's the thing is the imagery that I had for it is very kind of Lovecraftian. It's supposed to be that imagery is kind of disturbing, and that's all the porous materials and everything like that. Something that kind of like it makes me a little comfortable, but I knew that there's some people that just the thought of that kind of thing, you can kind of put them over the edge. So I knew I wanted that, but then otherwise it was more just like, what if something were to start corrupting your hand, and then we're to go from there. Which I guess subconsciously almost is kind of like something taken from like Evil Dead 2, because that's something that happens to the main character in that one. Anyway.
And it is true horror, because if I wasn't able to use my hand and I couldn't write, that would be my nightmare. That would be.
Well, and then there's just that general sensation of just losing control of whatever's there, losing that feeling, which I know is something that's another fear that people have, is that fear of that loss of control. The fear of being isolated even, which is something as I developed the story further, was something I was going for. It's just like he's getting further and further isolated as the time goes on, until its eventual end, where I don't think he could get any more isolated.
Yeah, I know. He's like in this like just floating in like nothingness, or it's like, anyways.
Literally just his consciousness just stuck in a place. So
yes, yeah. I love it. It's one of my favorites. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. It's like a mother and her children. Sorry, maybe I'll cut that out. I don't know. So with your process in writing, have you ever, because I know you have a blog, have you ever published anything else outside of that? Or is the Collective Darkness anthology your first printed book or anything, or what?
No, I've actually had one short story published before, or at least put into print. It was back in 4th grade. We got to write these little short stories for like Halloween, and the one I wrote was called Pumpkin's Halloween, and it was about a pumpkin's like first and unfortunately also last Halloween. And it actually had kind of a humorous end, though when I wrote it, I didn't realize it was humorous. Mm-hmm. I was just writing it, but then I'd read it to my brothers, and I'd get to the very end, and they would bust up laughing because of just how very sudden it was. Mm-hmm. Well, my teacher also apparently loved the story, so she submitted it for this young authors conference in our state.
Oh,
So it got to be printed in a collection of all the people that got invited to that thing. And so I technically have been published before
yes.
in something. So,
Well, if you have a link or if you have like a way for us to get to that, I will totally put that up on our website.
oh, I'd actually have to see what, I'm pretty sure my mom's got a copy of that somewhere. So I'll have to contact her, but she's probably got it in like a
To
box
have her
that
just
she's
take
not.
photos of it and then we'll
Yeah,
post it up.
it's one of those things like, do you know where that is? And she's probably going to be like, oh, it's probably stored away in the attic, along with the Ark of the Covenant and a number of other things. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, cool. So with this anthology, do you think that you're going to submit to our the next anthology? I don't know if I mentioned that. We have a fantasy one
I
coming up.
yeah, I actually looked it up on the editing me page,
Yes.
and I looked at that and I was like, I could possibly do something for that. I've thought about it, but I haven't had anything like kind of come to mind. Like, what would I write for this? Because it's
Hmm.
supposed to be somebody engaging in illegal or otherwise questionable
Yeah.
behavior. And I was like, I haven't really thought of fantasy in those terms. It's always been like, hero with a sword going out to fight a monster, that kind of thing. Very, very cliche stuff. But I was
Yes.
like,
Well,
I
you
could
could have a
possibly do
cliche.
this.
Oh,
Huh?
sorry. You could have it cliche, but just like turn it around on itself so it becomes something else. So it's like a hero, but maybe they're not. They're like actually not the hero of their story.
Yeah, oh, yeah. So it's like they're in their minds they're the hero, but
Yeah.
to everyone else, kind of like a Robin Hood kind of
Yeah.
thing. Where
Exactly.
Robin Hood's obviously doing a good thing, but to the king, he's the villain.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Well, cool.
okay, I can
Oh,
see
sorry.
that.
Yeah.
I was about to say that's something I could see possibly doing. I'll let you know.
It's fine. Well, do you have anything else that you'd like to add on just writing or your experiences with stories? It doesn't have to be with the anthology. It can be anything.
Well, I know that whenever it's come to me doing writing, if I've ever had like, let's just say some writer's block, because sometimes
Mhm.
you just get to that point in the story.
Yeah.
And there was one time I actually got to meet Orson Scott Card.
Ooh,
It was
cool.
actually, yeah, it was actually back when they had the old mall down in downtown Salt Lake, and they had Deseret
Mhm.
Book in there, and so you had a little meetup to do there. And so I got to have I got to have my copy of Ender's Game signed, and then I asked him, it's just kind of like, hey, so I've always had this thing where it's like I'll start writing a story and I'll get like 10 or 11 pages in. This is back when I was handwriting everything.
Mhm.
It's like, but then I'll start feeling like my story just sucks, and I don't want to like continue on with it, or I don't know what to do. And the thing he ended up telling me was that one of the things that contributes to writer's block is that if you get far enough into a story and you start feeling like that it sucks or you don't know where it is that you're going, there's a possibility that there's some element of your story that you yourself don't believe. So you
Mm.
don't know how it is that you're supposed to then go with it. Maybe you don't believe that the character is actually acting in the way they're supposed to. Maybe there's some element of the world that isn't jiving with something else. So you're not able to put two and two together. Like, how is this supposed to go? He's like, so you just kind of look at those elements, find out what it is that you're not believing, and see about trying to fix that. And there's a lot of times that if you do that, then you're able to move forward. And whenever it came to the anthology, that was one thing I was running into very early on, was I was trying to write it like a typical story with dialogue and describing
Yeah.
scenery and all this extra stuff. And one, I was running into a problem of length, because as I got into it more and more, it's like, well, if I'm going to mention this, then I got to mention this, and then this character's going to have to show up. And next thing I know, I've got basically a novella instead of a short story. And then there was just the issue of like, if I don't have the character doing this, or if I don't have this character showing up, then I don't really have a reason for him to be doing this, and then I don't believe what's going on. So I guess that'd be the one thing I'd say, is that for writer's block, and I actually do plan on writing this for part of the blog, but for writer's block, if you're running into trouble where you feel like your story sucks or you hate your character or something, it's probably because there's something you need to retool. So
No, I really like that. That's really insightful. I feel like that whenever I have writer's block, I have to go back like even a few pages in my story, or maybe there's something that just has been bothering me. And once I go back to that, I mean, sometimes I have to rewrite like 30 pages, but once I go back to that, my writer's block is gone. And so that's really awesome.
yeah, suddenly
Yeah,
everything's able to
exactly.
flow a lot better, at
Yeah.
least for a while.
Yeah. And then you have to do that again and again and again and again. Yes. That's the beauty of writing, though.
Yeah, the beauty of writing, it's in the rewriting.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it definitely is the rewriting, and it's definitely, yeah, there's so many there's so many points to a story that it's just, it's crazy to think that it ends even with the story, because it doesn't. It's like it keeps happening over and over. But
Yeah, even when you think you're finished, you go back and read it and you're like, I should have done this.
yep.
Like I forgot to mention this, so this doesn't make sense to me. Hopefully no one else caught that.
Well, if we didn't say it in the editing, then we did not catch it, so hopefully no.
No, like for me,
Yeah.
whenever it came to the story, like rereading it again, I sit there
Yeah.
and look at it and I'm like, it's in a good state, but I definitely know it's not complete. Like I know there's so much more I could do with this, and I'm like, but I'll come back to it at a later time.
Yep.
Like I'm gonna focus on other things, then maybe I can come back and turn this into the novella that I was about to. So
Yeah. Well, that's what I've been saying to some of the other authors too, because they've run into the same problem where they've made it so it's, because Crimson Snow and Figure in the Mirror, those two authors, Brandon and Austin, they were like 20,000 words or something. Like they were at novella length, and I was just like, we need to cut this. It's a lot. And yeah, and it's not even that the story is bad. It's just like it just doesn't work for the anthology. But it's like, yeah, you should go back and make that a novella or make that a story later. It's just, this is the preview to what it will be later.
yeah, the one thing I remind myself when it comes to things like that is that Ender's Game, which
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier, obviously, was originally a short story that
Oh,
got
interesting.
published in like a science fiction magazine, and then he later
Yeah,
made it into a book.
I think I've heard. Yeah, yeah. And now it's
Yes.
like this series. It's like it made Orson Scott Card who he is. Like it's a
Yeah,
movie.
it's
Yeah.
one of the things that made him stand out for sure.
Yeah.
Not just Ender's Game, but the Ender series in general. But
Yeah.
personally, I like the sequel to Ender's Game a little bit more. But Ender's Game itself is just a
Really?
fantastic book.
I've
Yeah.
never read the sequel. I've only read the first one.
No, I love Speaker for the Dead
Mhm.
because that was really my introduction to like what science fiction could be. Because
Oh,
obviously there's spaceships fighting
yeah.
aliens, but then this one was like you're on an alien planet and you're now dealing with this new alien culture that has this ritual that you've never seen before, that everyone's going to misinterpret what happens. And that was kind of a cool thing because this is a bit gruesome,
Yeah.
but then as you're getting through it, you're like, this is really fascinating. And that's what really opened my mind to like what science fiction could be, rather than just Star Wars kind of stuff where it's like priests with lightsabers, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's only one little genre or one little subgenre in the genre. I feel like we can't limit ourselves. It needs
No,
to be.
definitely not.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I am. If you don't have anything else, we'll just end the recording.
I'm good there. So
Thank you.